So, ein wenig provisorisch der Start heute.
Nein, voll professionell und...
Professionell, das meint sich, das Wort habe ich gesucht. Was habe ich gesagt?
weiß ich nicht.
Okay.
Genau.
Einen schönen guten Abend. Wir sind live
Im
im
Wein-Kreis.
Wein-Kreis. Es ist Dienstagabend 20 Uhr.
Ich bin der Kilian und das ist der...
Björn. Freut mich, dass ihr auch alle da seid schon wieder. Es ist, ich sage es jetzt nicht schon wieder, dass ich zum 10. Mal in Folge sage, es ist ein ganz besonderer Abend heute, aber auch das ist es. Aus mehrfacher Hinsicht. Erstens trinken wir das erste Mal gleich 2 Weine im direkten Vergleich.
Das stimmt tatsächlich nicht.
Also seit ich dabei bin.
Ja.
Ihr habt euren eigenen, glaube ich, schon mal mit Aldingers
Genau.
verkostet, oder? Genau.
Da standen sogar 3 Flaschen auf dem Tisch.
Geschwefelt, stimmt. Und zweitens ist heute ein ganz besonderer Winzer aus Portugal bei uns zu Gast. Tiago, vom wunderbaren Weingut. Es ist ja quasi so ein Komplex an Weingütern. Ist ja nicht nur ein Weingut. Alves de Sousa gehört ja quasi, aber dann, oder
Quinta Gaivosa gehört dazu,
ja.
Und noch ein paar andere. Wo sind wir?
Wir sind in der Nähe von Porto im Douro-Tal.
Ja.
Und nur dort dürfen Weine, die sogenannte Fortified Wines, auch den Namen Portwein tragen. Und genau das trinken wir heute auch. Und zwar gleich 2 Portweine. Einen weißen Port.
Und
Tony.
einen roten Tony.
Beide 10 Jahre alt. Beide ganz ausgezeichnet, das kann ich schon vorwegnehmen. Es gab, wie gesagt, einige Probleme bei der Lieferkette, sage ich mal, dass jetzt einige der Zuschauer hier zu Hause ein bisschen vielleicht einen weißen oder eben den roten oder doch beide Ports haben. Wir dachten uns, wir nehmen einfach dann beide und sprechen auch über beide. Und wir können ja vielleicht schon mal einschenken, bevor wir den Tiago dazu holen, vielleicht noch 1, 2 Worte zum Weingut. Das ist nämlich ein sehr, 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 sehr wichtiger Akteur da im Douro-Tal. Der Vater von Tiago, Domingo, glaube ich, wenn mich nicht alles täuscht, Gott sei Dank, das war richtig, ist ein Pionier und Wegbereiter des trockenen Rotweins im Douro-Tal, der tatsächlich sehr viel getan hat, dass Douro eben auch für trockene Rotweine bekannt ist und exportiert diese Weine aber erst seit Portugal in der EU ist. Und das war, glaube ich, 1999 der Fall. Also alles noch eine recht junge Sache, aber in der Zeit ist da wirklich schon Erstaunliches vollbracht worden. Und das ist eine Familienbande, wie man sie sich vorstellt, also voller Geschichten, voller Traditionen und voller Leidenschaft. Wenn man den Tiago schon mal erlebt hat bei unserer Weinmesse, bei Perspektive Wein, dann weiß man, wow, wenn der anfängt zu erzählen, ne, also das ist nicht nur ein Verkäufer, der sein Produkt verkaufen möchte, sondern der brennt mit Leib und Seele für Portwein, für Wein allgemein und Portwein
Da ist richtig Herzblut dahinter.
Mega. Sowieso Portwein ist so ein Getränk, das ist so archetypisch für die Region, das ist so, klingt völlig kitschig, Entschuldigung dafür, aber das ist so die Seele Portugals irgendwie in eine Flasche gefüllt, finde ich. Also
So könntest du es sagen, ja.
jetzt genug von mir, wir schnuppern und probieren erstmal.
Die Farbe finde ich super klasse, wieso?
Ja, Bernstein, oder?
Die haben eigentlich beide sowas Bernsteiniges, ja.
Stimmt.
Aber der Weiße hat voll so einen orangen-gelben Ton und der Rote hat halt mehr sowas Rotes.
Cool. Also ich habe sofort Marzipan oder wahrscheinlich Mandel halt irgendwie in der Nase.
Und so getrockneten Pfirsich.
Ein bisschen Orange vielleicht auch, oder?
Ja.
Kräutrig. Also. Und hier.
Da habe ich mehr so Dörrpflaumen, gedörrte Kirschen. Aber auch so auf Französisch würde man sagen Trockenfrüchte und meint damit Nüsse.
Ah, ja. Aber das ist richtig. Wir sind hier alkoholmäßig. Der Weiße hat 19,5 und der
Rote auch.
Rote auch. Okay. Viel Spaß beim Trinken und Zuschauen. Ich sage immer sehr zum Wohl. Ja?
Zum Wohl.
Mit dem Weißen
Mit welchem?
anfangen?
Ja, mit dem Weißen. Cheers. Und ich glaube, wenn der Tiago schon zuschaut, you can join us now, otherwise we will...
I think Tiago is already present, so... Oh ja.
Mist, wollt Kaiserschmarrn dazu kochen?
Wir wollten Kaiserschmarrn dazu kochen.
Ah,
Wir haben auch nicht
toll.
gefragt, ob uns jemand versteht, diesmal. Aber
Ja,
ich glaube, inzwischen hätte sich jemand gemeldet. Tiago, good
wer
evening.
wer weiß. Hi.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you? Good to see you.
You
We are
too.
great.
Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Dear Sousa. Zumbo.
Just one question that we didn't ask before. If you guys can hear us in the chat, just give us a thumbs up. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it would
Tiago,
be a pity.
we just started talking, and sometimes there are, technical issues. and Killian and I have been talking for minutes until somebody said, "Hey guys, we can't hear you." So since then, we always ask, the audience if they can hear us. So just maybe a little thumbs up or a heart. I would prefer a heart, actually.
Yes, a heart would be
If
nice.
you can hear us. Thank you.
Well, I've
Tiago,
noticed I've noticed that your bottles are already like kind of empty. So the technical problems may be because of that.
There's always a good excuse. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How are you? How has your day been, Tiago?
It's been fantastic. It was intense because, well, it was divided between winery preparing some new blends, vineyard also visiting some new plantings that we're doing. But in the end, it was one of those like almost perfect days when we have the chance to do a little bit of everything and everything goes smoothly. So, and now of course finish the evening with you guys. So, fantastic day.
Yeah, it's very nice of you to say. How's the weather over there right now? Because here in Stuttgart we had rain and this Sahara dust in the air today, which turned the skies into this eerie glow.
Yeah, it was like sepia.
Yeah, it was like a sepia filter. Right, yeah. right. How about you? How's the weather there?
And that's crazy light and dust is here as well. So yeah, we also woke up with that. So yeah, it's everywhere. It's a very strange phenomenon. I haven't seen the news yet to see what exactly it is, but yeah, it's here as well.
Well, let's talk about port, shall we? We already made a little introduction and said what we have in the glass today. But maybe for starters, you can tell us a bit about the ports we are having. The white tawny and the red tawny, 10 years. So what's the story behind these two wines we are drinking today?
Well, we're talking about two wines that are, well, one is a big classic, a 10-year-old tawny, basically, and the other one is kind of a new classic. It's a new approach to ports that didn't even exist before. I'm obviously talking about the white version. And so it shows why a great classic like a 10-year-old tawny is always a really, really beautiful wine. And how can we still reinvent a great classic like port with something totally new, like a white 10-year-old. And so I think that it's wonderful that we have the chance to have both together because it shows a fantastic tradition, but also what's new about port.
Okay, so it's kind of new because a lot of producers have white ports, but usually it's really simple quality, maybe 3 years old, and usually without designation of age, right?
Exactly. So for many years, white port was always seen as something a little bit more simple. So it wasn't taken as seriously as traditional red port, so rubies and tawnies. And so it was only in 2007, basically, that this new category of this new special categories of ports, of white ports, so either with indication of age or even colheitas, basically began. So it was true that it was something that was kind of neglected by everybody, including us producers. But well, the quality was always out there. So the potential was kind of like sleepy in the vineyards, and it was really a matter of putting the same effort that we put for red ports on white ports as well. And right away the quality started to show, and it revealed a fantastic potential. So on white port basically, and in this one in particular, you basically have many of the elements that you will find also in a tawny basically. So basically we begin at the vineyard, so very old vineyards with more than 60, more than 80, and more than 100 years. So it's a blend from some of our most iconic vineyards in Gaivosa are here, so including stuff like the vineyards that make Gaivosa or Lordelo or even Abandonado. We have a little bit of Abandonado here, so some of the white varieties that are also there. We keep some for Abandonado because I love also to use a little bit of white on those, but most of it actually we separate from making this very, very special white port. Then, so we have a lot of different varieties there coming from all these beautiful mixed plantings. And then to basically to enhance all that potential, all that complexity that is already out there in the vineyard, we basically vinify it as a red. So this is right away the second element that makes this white port so special. So first, the vineyard, of course, the grapes are really, really special. But then we also try to work in a way that will really enhance all its elements. So basically, we start fermenting with the skins, basically, so like a red. So the idea is to have more flavors and more complexity developing from the skin contact. And then, as you know, most of the time, and as you were well saying, white port tends to be either very dry or very sweet, depending on the specific categories that we're talking about. So a dry or off dry port, or then a very sweet white port like Lagrimas. So you have the two ends, and sometimes either it's very, very sweet, or then it becomes very dry and very austere. And so here, what we've decided to do is really to stop the fermentation. So as you guys well know, port is made by stopping the fermentation with the addition of a wine spirit. So that's why, on one hand, port is sweet because not all the sugar is fermented till the end, and it's a little bit stronger in terms of alcohol because we added this wine spirit at 77%. So it becomes a little bit stronger. And so we do this right in the middle of the fermentation, which means that we'll find a really interesting balance between the sweetness, the alcohol, and all the different elements that are making the wine. After it ages in the cellar, because realizing that there was so much potential and so much complexity there, therefore the decision of keeping it aging in the cellar in barrels, basically for, in this case, 10 years. It could be more. So we've already did a 20-year-old white port as well. So, but we keep it aging all this long so that we can really enhance even more all that complexity and develop all that maturity that normally you would find in the tawny port, but now you're finding also in this kind of white ports that are really, really cool. And so that bring you those complexity elements that you'll find again in the tawny, but with all these new flavors that are coming from the white grapes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Maybe one question. You said that you use 77% alcohol to fortify the wine. So it means that there's 20% or 23% which is not alcohol. So you probably have to be really precise in choosing the right alcohol, because the 20-something%, of course, are flavorful. It's not just water.
Yes, well, we're talking about the wine spirit, so it comes from the wines, base wines that were distilled to make the spirits, and so true that it's very, very important to have a good selection of the best possible wine spirit. In this case, for example, what we're looking for is always the most neutral possible. So we don't want to have any kind of interference of this wine spirit with our wine, with our juice, basically. So we want our grapes to express, not the spirit. So the most neutral possible, basically. So yeah, so we basically, in the end, it smells only like alcohol, ethanol. So it's 77% ethanol. So that we only use it to stop the fermentation and doesn't have an impact on the final quality of the wine. So it's basically the.
So I just asked because in sherry they use almost pure alcohol. I think it's 95 or 98%. So there the spirit is really neutral, and if you distill it so high, basically there isn't any aromatics left that can interfere. So I think super interesting, the difference between sherry and port.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good point, Killian, because it's true that, for example, in this case, it's mandatory. For port, it's mandatory to use 77% alcohol. It's something that has been discussed in the past also, and currently as well. If we should use instead a wine alcohol instead, so instead of a wine spirit, so closer to what sherry is doing, so a few other fortified wines also do. And so it's an open discussion. True that so far, and it's been like this for a very, very long time, but I think that it's something that it does make a lot of sense to discuss and to experiment, because true that if I would have the chance to have something, even a spirit that will be even more concentrated, so that will mean that it will interfere even less with our wine, with our grapes, I'm on it basically. So because again, I want my grapes to show. I don't want the spirit to show. So it's something, a discussion that we're definitely open to try. If we're allowed, of course, because it's true that for now we're not allowed. So we can only experiment, but not really do it.
And do you experiment in this direction?
Of course, well, I'm always curious, and I think that it's well for us to keep evolving and to do better and better. We have to experiment and we have to try. So even if it is not for commercial purposes, it's very, very important that we try it so that we know if it can be a valid tool or not. And it's something that, to be honest, it seems quite valid. So again, it's a discussion that does make sense to bring.
And experimenting is also kind of in your family.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Well, it's true because, well, we started with dry wines in a moment that, still wines in the Douro Valley in the moment that there were only a few exceptions. And it seemed before that Douro could only be basically, well, was almost like, I wouldn't say one trick pony, but was basically focusing only on port, and so in a very specific kind of wine, regardless of all these fantastic different categories that their after port also has, but it was almost limited to this great fortified wine. And then in the early 90s, with well, pioneer work of people like Domingos, my father, and a few, well, some other colleagues, and especially it was a movement that started a lot with the local growers, and then after the port shippers started to follow as well. But it was a movement that started a lot with the independent local growers, and it showed that it was indeed possible to make other great wines besides port. But never forgetting port even so, because it's true that the two wines coexist very, very naturally, both in the vineyards, because basically you have the two AOCs coexisting. So part of the grapes can be used for making port, part can be used for making the still wines. And then, of course, they totally coexist in terms of in the table, in terms of the moment of consumption, because it's something that basically just extends our window of pleasure with Douro wine. So we can start with the still wines and then finish, of course, with our, well, with this extraordinary tradition that is port wine.
Wow, it's I'm always so impressed by stories like the one of your family, because when it started all, with the red wines, with the dry red wines in Douro, I mean, nobody knew if this was going to be a success, but still you did it, your father or your grandfather. So there's so much courage involved always, and so much risk taking. I sometimes wonder why not more people do this, but is this a common trait in your family, not only on the business side of things, but also, when it comes to your personalities? Are you all very, let's just do it? Are you all very courageous, so to say?
Well, I don't know if we're courageous, but we we love vines and wines, basically. So it's something that gives us a lot of, well, personal pleasure. It's our life, basically. So when we have the chance indeed to, well, to do our very best with the vineyards and with the wines, well, it's something that we feel that it's what we have to do. And what was happening before was that we had a very, very important part of the production of a vineyard that was being totally neglected, totally wasted, because, well, the grapes that couldn't be used for making port basically had almost no value. And this talking in a region that basically has one of the highest costs of production in the world, thanks to all the challenges that were created by Mother Nature, basically. So basically, on one hand, it created extraordinary conditions that we have, but at the same time, of course, that it's really, really challenging in a region, in a mountain region like the Douro Valley. So it's true that it wouldn't be sustainable if we would keep the model as it was. So fortunately, Domingos and its generation was so important because they really created the foundation for what Douro is nowadays, basically. So of course, there was a lot of fantastic work done before, especially in terms of port, but to make it really sustainable for all the region and for all the growers, it was so important to make sure that the grapes will start having a different value, basically, and that component, totally transformed the region. And there's still things to do, of course, but it was a milestone for the Douro Valley for sure.
All right.
That's super interesting because 2 weeks ago we talked with João Cabral Nicolau de Almeida, who is also really or his father and grandfather were also really important in the development of the Douro Valley.
Yeah, the fathers.
Yeah.
And then you, of course, the next generation, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So if you look at the way your father did things, in the cellar, in the vineyards, the overall work philosophy, which characteristics do you share with him? Where are you similar to him? And where did you, take an altogether new path?
Oh, I have to, if usually, you tend to have that a little bit that image of, parent being somehow proud with the work of the son. I don't know if that's the case, but I know that I'm super proud of what Domingos achieved and what he still is making. So he's a fantastic inspiration, for me for sure, but I believe that also for a lot of people, for, all what he was able to achieve, and at the same time, how he could inspire also others to do the same. Because again, to start making dry wines in a moment, he started, he and of course also other producers with great merit as well. It was extraordinary, and it showed to many that it was possible to do the same. So I think that what we see nowadays in terms of such a diverse and wonderful ecosystem of great producers, great winemakers working in the Douro Valley, again, we have to thank to that generation that showed that it was possible and that created our foundation. So, of course, that at the same time, it's true that every new generation should contribute with something new. So what Domingos did, and it's still doing, of course, was extraordinary, and again, it's a great inspiration. But if we would just keep doing the same, at some point we will stop in time, basically. So it's very important also to bring new ideas, and so I think that one of the contributions that I brought was basically, I really like to study, and I love studying vines and wines, and so I really wanted to have an even bigger knowledge of all the different vineyards that compose our different quintas, and in particular Quinta da Gaivosa. When I joined officially the winemaking team, basically we started to do all these little experiments, so individualizing all the different vineyards, because before we used to make already some blends since the beginning, to already unifying together some of our most important plots to make some of our most important wines. But being curious about which will be the contributions of the different vineyards, I've tried to adapt our vinification capacity to smaller and smaller scale, so that we could really individualize all those little elements and really understand the source of the different things that we were finding already before in the wine. So it's much more work for sure. But again, the comprehension that we have about the individual character of the vineyards is different, and this really helped create many other wines. Although that wasn't really the original idea. The idea was really to understand the vineyard, so that we could understand even better what makes a Quinta da Gaivosa red, for example. So which are the key elements for Quinta da Gaivosa. But true that in that proper process, the diversity that we found so incredible that resulted also in quite a few new wines.
Wow. I'm interesting. I'm interested. You usually use the lagage for pressing, or not pressing, but for mashing. How small are they that they allow you to do it vineyard by vineyard, or how big are they?
So we don't use for every wine. We use the lagares in our for our wines. We use exclusively actually for ruby ports and within ruby ports specifically for vintage port and for late bottle vintage. So
Okay.
all other ports and also the still wines we prefer actually to vinify in vats. Why? Because Lalagat, it's a massive tool of extraction, basically. So you extract a lot just because of the shape of the little open fermenters. So we're talking about open fermenters, basically that are almost like a tank, or they look like a small swimming pool, basically. And as they're so short and so wide, this means that when the fermentation begins and all the solids go up because of the release of CO2 during the fermentation impulses all the solids up, as you know, creating that cap. Well, as the lagar is so extended, so it creates such a extended cap on the top. That means that almost all the solids are always wet underneath. So instead of having like that big proportion of cap that you have in a vat, you have a much thinner but much more extended. So it's on all the surface of that big open fermenter, that big kind of swimming pool, which means that it extracts a lot.
So there's much more contact from the cap to the wine.
Exactly. So the surface of contact is huge. So it's a lot, and you have very, very little ability to control it, basically. So that's why, for example, we redesigned a little bit, so our lagars are a little bit different than most. They're much smaller capacity than most. They're like only they take roughly around 2 tons, 2,000 kilos of grapes. So that on the one hand, we can really individualize those really, really unique vineyards that we want to work apart to begin. And then they also have a different shape. So instead of being very, very wide, they're actually a little bit shorter. They're almost like I would say like a little tank. For example, even when I was showing the first sketches of those lagars when I was doing it, I showed to my father, and he looked at me, he laughed, and he said, "But this is not a lagar. This is a wash." Like a lagar, and he was right. And it doesn't look like a lagar, true, but it allows us to have a totally different control on that extraction that it's important, of course, but it's important that we do have the ability to control until what extent we want really to extract. Otherwise, if we don't have that possibility, we may over extract or we may not extract enough, but it is just what it is. At this way, we have much more control. As well, all the surface of the lagar is actually temperature controlled. So we have also much more control on the time of the fermentation, on the temperature of fermentation. So it's a really, really interesting tool because it basically allows us to still to have something a very, very cool technique of winemaking, but adapt to what we look for, which is always like balance and then not to over extract, just to go until the right extent, basically.
And do you have a machine to do the punch down, or do you do it by foot?
Well, it's something that I always loved to do, and I was actually the one that reintroduced foot threading in here at the winery. But I have to admit that, even if I love to do it, and I was always the first one to jump inside the lagar, I have to admit, well, it's a hard work. So it's fun for the first 10 minutes, but then it's hard. So which means that at some point, and when we designed this small lagars, we decided also to together with a local tech company to have also a threading machine. So it's a threading robot And it's true that, well, most of the times the more romantic will always tell you, well, but the feet are warm and the feet are soft. I won't say the feet bring ease because that's not much romantic, but there's a very romantic idea of foot threading. And the thing is that again, it's hard work. And for example, the first threading that we call cord or cut, it's 4 hours straight threading.
So this is when the berries are whole and you have to crush them up.
Exactly. And so that's right in the beginning. So they're like very, very intact still. So that, which makes it even harder basically. So it's hard work. So it's very, very difficult to have consistency. So, by using the threading machine and which we don't use it for this, we use it more for the ruby. So for LDVs and vintage ports, but by using for those wines, the consistency of the work is totally different. We can do exactly what we wish, and most important, we can create like a totally customized threading program for each single little lagar that we have there. So each vineyard that is separated there will have a totally customized work, which makes a big difference. So we'll be able really to enhance all the individual character of those vineyards by having a totally customized work that will be consistent and that makes a huge difference. So we basically just like using a technique that was introduced by Romans 2,000 years ago, literally. So threading in open fermenters and bringing it to the 21st century with the new tools that we have nowadays. So it's trying to get the best from both worlds.
Nice. Wow. Let me, if you allow, and please forgive me, steer this into quite another direction, because I'm a very emotional guy, and I guess in times like these we can all, make use of a very emotional, nice story. And I know that you're a family man. You love family, you love tradition. Your family has a huge tradition, and Port has as well. So what does it basically mean to you to be part of this tradition, to make Port in this family? So what would you say? How would you describe it?
Well, Björn, it's a wonderful privilege, I have to say. It's a big honor and at the same time a great responsibility. Because well, we have the privilege to have really extraordinary vineyards that were planted by grandfather, by great grandfather, that are now at its very best. So vineyards with more than 100 years, basically, that are making still wines that are very unique. So that's definitely a great privilege and honor. But at the same time, the responsibility is huge, because you have really to honor also that all that legacy that the past generations prepared for you. So great grandfather, and then having such a special father as well. Well, it's a big responsibility. So we have all to do our best in our generation now, really to honor what they did, and also to make sure. So that's also part of the challenge and this responsibility, to make sure that the next generations will have the same privilege as we did. So to make sure that they will have also vineyards with this character that we still find in these old plantings, basically, and at the same time to prepare also the basis of the wines for the next generation. So if now we can make like a very special 20-year-old Tawny, for example, we have to make sure that we're already creating also the basis for the 20-year-old Tonys in 20 years time, and then the 40s, and then so on and so on. So it's a mix of honor, privilege, and definitely a big responsibility.
Wow, beautiful.
Maybe just one step back. You didn't always produce port. You only started in the 80s or 90s?
Well, we always did port, actually, Killian. So basically, well, that was really the family tradition. So that was with many generations. What happened is that, well, the tradition was the local growers will do port, will vinify port from their vineyards, and most of the time will then sell it to the classic port merchants. And so that was the model of production for many years. So first, well, some of the brands that you usually find in the market originally didn't have much vineyards. So most of the time they will buy the wines from the local growers and then make their own blends. Then after the evolution in terms of the port production was that those port merchants started also to vinify their own wines, basically. So buying grapes from the growers and then vinifying, basically, so that they have a little bit more control on the production. And then third step was actually when the port merchants started to have also their own vineyards as well. So now you have most of the port merchants also have their own vineyards. So although they still buy grapes and many times they still buy also wines to other producers, but the model of production here in terms of port evolved over time this way. So we've been doing port in that matter for 5 generations now. So it started in the basically end of the 19th century, basically the tradition of the family for making port. But with our own label, it's true that it was much later. So we were vinifying, but selling it to the merchants, and with our own label, that happened only for the first time in '99, actually, with the LBV, with the late bottle vintage from Quinta da Gaivosa. So that was the first one that we bottled with the family's own label. So all the other wines that we were making before for five generations were actually always sold to other producers, basically.
Was it at the beginning hard to sell because, of course, you are against the big brands and they have marketing, they are already established in the markets locally and overseas, and you as a little boat against a lot of big ships, I imagine that it's quite difficult.
It was a challenge indeed, Killian, because, well, it's true that, for example, if with the still wines, with the Douro wines, we were again one of the pioneers. So we had the challenge of not having a real market for the wines, but at the same time, being the part of the pioneers, there was not so much competition. But with port, well, there's companies with centuries of tradition in the market. So of course it was challenging, and it's a very specific wine category, as you know. So true that people were already used to find some specific names and specific brands on the shelves for a very long time. And true that it was kind of challenging in the beginning to also to find our own place. But I think that, at some point, as we wanted to do something different, it wouldn't make any sense to try to do the same as it was present in the market. I think that it really helped us to find our place in this really unique port world. So what we've been trying to do is to bring port back to the vineyard, basically. So for a very long time, port, and especially because of this evolution that we were talking about, and so with the different merchants basically sourcing grapes from many different sources to create a kind of like a house style of port. So a port that would basically replicate or express the character of that specific company or that specific brand. This means that basically they would source grapes from many different places to create that style that will be consistent, and it will be always identified of being that specific brand. We don't want to do that. We want to show the vineyard instead. So instead of building a house style of wine, we want really to show this beautiful diversity that the vineyards in the Douro Valley and our vineyards in particular have to offer. So that's what we want to show, and that's why we do these little vinifications of very things that we think that are indeed quite unique and very, very special. And so with this, I think that we're multiplying this,
Sorry.
what art is all about. So instead of having like, for example, nowadays there are 5 big groups of ports. So instead of having 5 or 10 or 20 different styles of port, multiply this by infinite almost, because, well, the beautiful diversity that exists in the vineyard basically means that there are so many little treasures, so many little secrets that you can reveal basically from that specific vineyard, and that's really amazing, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reveal those little treasures that we find in very, very small plots, and to show it in the different wines.
So there's a little bit of magic in every bottle.
Yes, and I think the comment that just came in sums it up quite well. It's in Portuguese, but I'll try to translate it in English. Great nectar of the gods of the Douro, and something, now it's, I can't see it anymore, or something
of... It was a nectar of the gods and something with, humanity or...
Patrimoine, Erbe, was ist Erbe auf English?
Heritage?
Yeah, heritage of the earth, or of human.
It was a good summary, I guess. And you know, Tiago, as you're not only doing port, but also dry reds and whites, what... Basically, very basic question. What in the end is so special about making port? So, what in which way is port different from everything else you do?
Well, Björn, it's even, I think that it's even hard to describe it, because it's something that it's in us basically. It's like it's what's run inside our veins basically. So
all right.
Through that. That it's well, it's been extraordinary to find all these new expressions of our vineyards of the Douro Valley, as all this new generation of still wines as well. But port is something unique. It's something that could only have been created in a region like this, basically, because of these crazy conditions that nature created, with these crazy soils that are not soils, are rock, basically, with these slopes that create indeed so many different conditions, basically, that basically makes a lot of sense that port is at the same time so diverse. So having places that are extraordinary for making a great vintage port, super rich, super concentrated, super intense. But then as you go higher in altitude and to a different kind of exposition, then you find something, much fresher, that will give you a fantastic base for making a white port or a great stony port as well. So basically it's the result of this really unique condition. So it's hard to explain. Port is something indeed that is, to begin, it's one of the great classics of the world still, side by side with Champagne or with white Burgundies or with Claret from Bordeaux, basically. So it's one of the big classics, but at the same time it's so unique, and that is true that it couldn't come from anywhere else than our beautiful Douro Valley.
I like the answer, because sometimes you just can't put it into words, right? Sometimes something has to be left inexplicable almost, because as soon as you put it into words, maybe the magic is gone. So this is such a special thing, from the region where you come from. So maybe it's good that you just can't analyze it 1,000%, so to say.
Yeah. Talking about special things in vineyards, if we talk about this now, I think we could stay there 3 hours longer.
All right.
But
we still got some port left.
You've got one very, very special vineyard.
My bottle is finished already.
Oh, no.
Oh, Tiago,
okay,
we can learn from you.
We have to do it really shortly.
But I have to that my wife, Katerina, helped also, and my cat.
Okay, that's good. Your cat as well. Wow.
Well, winemaker cat, so what you would expect?
That's true. So there's one very, very special vineyard in your portfolio called Abandonado.
Oh yeah.
You talked about it before, because some of the grapes in the white port come from this vineyard. It's a really, really special vineyard. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Please, yeah.
The short version.
Yeah.
if possible.
How much time we have?
I don't know.
Just take your time.
It's indeed a very special vineyard. So it was planted, well, roughly around almost 90 years ago, in the top of Quinta de Gaivosa, in the top of the slope, one of the highest points, so around 500 meters. And if it is still difficult to plant a vineyard today, imagine how it was at that time. So when our ancestors were preparing the soil, basically they weren't able to go deep enough, so the rock stayed too close to the surface. So they planted the vines, most started to die, and after some more time, well, half of the vineyard was gone already. So they thought we have really to forget about this because it's too hard. So all the local people started to know this vineyard, this specific area as o abandonado, the abandoned. So many years after, already with my father and then also with me helping, well, we were passing by the vineyard all the time, and we were thinking, we have to do something about this. It has more rocks than vines, producing almost nothing. So we've tried to replant. Everything died again, basically, because we were literally planting over rock. We thought we had to be more drastic. We'll have to dynamite the whole thing, as we usually do in this kind of conditions. And when we were about to do it, this was back in 2004, and it was basically on that time that I was starting to study the different vineyards. And so I asked Domingos, well, let me just give it one last try, just even to know what to plant next, just to give us ideas of which will be the variety that can work here. And we did that in 2004, and it blown us away. It showed right away so much character, so much personality that we fell in love with it, and we just kept it as it was. So we didn't dynamite the vineyard; we kept it as it was. Still has more rocks than vines, and since then we've been doing this really, really special wine. That where what I think that it makes it special is really how it can translate so well all those elements that we find in the vineyard. So you feel the slate, you feel the sheath, really. You feel well that intensity, that concentration from the very low yield because of the soil, because of the very old age as well. But then you have freshness at the same time, freshness from the altitude, freshness from the surrounding vegetation, because we have a lot of like little forests, so with eucalyptus, with pine trees. So you find all those like fresh elements as well. So yeah, it's a wine that expresses that very, very specific and special place. And so there's no signature there. This besides the vineyard. The vineyard is the signature, basically.
And you're still trying to replant the missing, I don't know, the missing vines.
Vine.
Yeah.
Well, no, we've at some point we decided really just to embrace it, that to assume it had to be like that, basically. And what we've been doing actually is, and it was part of my beautiful day today, was actually to visit the vineyard right next to Abandonado, which was still part of Abandonado, basically. That we're actually now well, planting again, basically. So that part was actually totally invaded by the forest. So it was only like pine trees and bushes there. And so we've still kept some of those, basically, because we know how important it is still to keep some other kinds of vegetation, some natural vegetation, so that we have a more diverse and sustainable ecosystem, basically. So to have more biodiversity there, basically. But at the same time, we were able to and what we're trying to do is to recreate basically what we have in Abandonado. So planting the same varieties, in some cases even using the pruning cuts from Abandonado. So in that matter, basically we're literally cloning basically the vineyard. So it's exactly the same gene with the closest conditions possible, basically. And so that when time comes, and it will come, so nothing lasts forever. We won't last forever. And well, Abandonado may last a little bit more than us because, well, you know, that plant can live for a very long time if we let it. But we're again making sure that the next generations will have also abandonado or something that will really be able to replace it in the future. So with the same varieties, with the same kind of viticulture as well. So we call this work our new old vineyards, basically. So using the same philosophy, so the same varieties. So some of these minor old varieties that almost disappeared, we're trying to recover it. We're using the same density of planting. We're using the same old training system that showed that it was so well adapted to our conditions. So basically, we're literally trying to recreate this very, very special vineyards for the future.
Wow, great. So basically you're planting a vineyard now that your children can work on it and their children can drink the wine.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's really the idea. And again,
No,
it is. It's like this. Yeah. Wow.
That's great.
Just my mind.
It sounds crazy, but it's not, because at the same time, again, we're having the same previous guys. So we're working with vineyards like that. So again, we have to make sure that the future generations will have that very same privilege, basically.
And that's so great about Tiago, isn't it? I mean, no matter what you ask him, he always comes around the corner with such a great story.
Yeah.
You know, we could go on for hours and hours, I'm pretty sure. But
it may have been the port inspiration. So who knows?
Tiago,
that's the thing about port. It also inspires your spirit, and then you have beautiful things after, basically.
Yeah, remember that, people. Remember that when you buy the port and drink it.
Or the abandonado.
Yeah.
With moderation, of course. But again, when we're back home already, just like enjoying a nice glass of wine, can't find a better way to finish a day.
That's true.
Yeah. Maybe some people found the conversation so interesting that they want to visit you. Is that possible?
Of course. So everybody's more than welcome to come and see us here. So I think that, when you have the chance to visit the Douro, it really helps to understand even better why Douro created something so unique as port wine, and why also dry Douro wines are also so unique and have so much character. So it's a very, very unique region. It's definitely one of the most beautiful wine regions in the world, and the way that the wines express that this crazy beautiful landscape, it's also quite remarkable. So come and see us anytime. It will be a pleasure to have you here. So you're most welcome to come anytime.
Thank you so much, Tiago, and thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you for the wines.
Yeah, thank you for the wines. A pleasure as always, I really have to say. Hopefully next time in person again. Be it, in Portugal or in Germany. Yeah.
Yes.
Are you coming to Perspectiva?
Of course. I've already started to practice my dancing moves, because I know that there's always a moment for that. So I hope that you guys are also. I know that Ben usually even takes dance classes, so that is good shape.
Yeah.
So
every
now
Tuesday Afterlife in Wein-Kreis we do dancing.
Yeah,
it's here at the Weinhandlung.
We push the pallets to the side and then do a dancing class here.
So preparations are in full swing.
I'll make sure that I'll have my dancing shoes on, so that we can all.
I'm looking forward, Tiago. I'm looking forward.
Oh my God, this will be so great.
It will be fantastic to be with you guys again. So
absolutely.
So it will be really, really wonderful to be with everybody there, because it's true that it's an extraordinary event, and you're able to gather such a special group of people that it's always a real treat to join you. So can't wait.
Thank
to be
you
there.
so much.
Thank you. Well, Tiago, thanks again. Everybody watching, thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. I know you had a good time. What's up next week, Killian?
You aren't there next week, right?
I'm actually not there. No.
You're in Sicily.
Yeah, I'm in Sicily. Wow. Yeah.
That's super nice. I'll be here next week this time. I'll be having Sven Leiner from Weingut Leiner with the Kalkboden Grauburgunder, if I'm not mistaken. That would be really embarrassing.
No, it is.
Super nice biodynamic biodynamisch angebaute Weine. My English is really strong here.
He's a great
What
guy.
else? Yeah, he's super knowledgeable.
Great winery, yeah. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, that will be super interesting as well.
Next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Maybe I'm even watching from Sicily, you know.
Yeah, you can do the moderation as well from there.
Well, why not? Why not? Why not?
Why not?
Actually, yeah,
That would be so cool.
All right, but for now, have a good night, everybody. Tiago, have a good night as well. See you very soon.
Cheers.
Take care, stay healthy. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Und Carsten, nein, unsere Flaschen sind noch nicht leer, aber die sind beide halb leer. Also es ist quasi wie wenn wir eine Flasche getrunken hätten.
Ja.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.